Real paranormal evidence found in a basement shelter. The first sound was not a scream. It wasn't a bang. It wasn't even loud. It was a soft, deliberate tap. I remember because I was counting seconds in my head when it happened. 1, 2, 3. The tap came between 3 and 4, precise enough that my counting stopped. At the time, I didn't know why I was counting. There was no reason to. I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't afraid yet. It was just quiet in the basement shelter, and counting gave the quiet edges. Something to hold on to. The shelter was beneath an old rental house on the outskirts of town, built sometime in the early 1950s. Maybe earlier. Cold War. It had fallout, shelter, concrete poured thick, reinforced with rusting steel rods that bled orange streaks down the walls. The kind of place that smelled permanently damp, no matter how many dehumidifiers he ran. I was there to document it. That's all. I work freelance inspection, documentation, historical property reports. Nothing paranormal, nothing sensational. Just footage, measurements, notes. The owner wanted proof the shelter was structurally sound before sealing it permanently. I arrived late in the afternoon, just as the sun was dropping behind the tree line. The house itself was empty. No furniture, no electricity except a temporary generator outside. The air inside had that hollow echo you only get in an abandoned place. Is every step sounding like it didn't belong to you? The shelter entrance was through a steel hatch in the basement floor. It took both hands to lift it. The hinges screamed. I stood there for a long time before going down. Longer than necessary. The air that came up from the opening was colder than the rest of the basement. Not dramatically so. Just enough to notice, like stepping near an open refrigerator. I told myself it was normal. Underground concrete spaces hold temperature. I switched on my headlamp. The beam cut into darkness, but didn't immediately give anything back. Concrete steps descended into the shelter, narrow and steep. Each step worn down in the center as if many feet had passed there once, and then stopped. I went down slowly. The sound of my boots echoed too sharply. The shelter was smaller than I expected. One main room, maybe 12 by 15 feet, with a low ceiling. Pipes ran along the walls. Old shelving units rusted into skeletal frames. A metal desk bolted to the floor. And silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that presses against your ears. I did a slow sweep with the camera. Dust hung in the air like frozen smoke. My breath sounded too loud in my headset. I made notes. Allowed dimensions. Visible cracks. Moisture damage. Routine. Nothing was wrong. That's what I kept thinking. Nothing was wrong. The first hour passed without incident. I filmed. I measured. I cataloged. I even sat at the metal desk for a while, checking forms. The chair was gone, but the desk remained, cold under my palms. Time moved strangely down there, without windows, without changing light. Minutes stretched. I checked my watch more than once, surprised by how little time had passed. Tap again. Same sound. Same softness. It came from behind me. Primera, fros. Not because I was scared yet, but because my brain was trying to place it. Concrete settles. Metal contracts. Pipe stick. All of that makes noise. Random noise. This wasn't random. It was singular. I turned slowly, light beams sweeping across the shelves. The far wall. The corner where the pipes disappeared into the ceiling. Nothing moved. I laughed under my breath, embarrassed at how fast my heart was beating. Old buildings, I said, mostly to hear a human voice. The sound didn't come again. For a long time. I finished the initial documentation just after dusk. I could tell because the air from the stairwell felt different. When I checked it, cooler, heavier. Night air sinking down. I debated leaving, but there was more to do. The owner wanted extended footage and broken shots, proving no hidden damage. That meant staying. So I stayed. I set up a tripod in the center of the room and let the camera run. No movement. No edits. Just time passing in a concrete box. I sat against the wall, knees pulled up, listening to the faint hum of the generator somewhere above me. It was barely audible, like a distant heartbeat. Minutes passed, then longer. My eyes adjusted more to the darkness beyond the headlamp's beam. Shadows seemed deeper now, thicker. The corners of the room felt farther away. I noticed the temperature drop again, not sudden, gradual. Like the shelter was breathing out. I wrapped my jacket tighter around myself. My breath fogged faintly. That's when I realized something else. The shelter smelled different, not just damp concrete anymore. There was something underneath it. Old air. Stale. Trapped. Like a room that hadn't been opened in decades. But the shelter had been opened. I was there. The camera kept rolling. At some point, I stopped counting time. I stopped checking my watch. I just listened. That's when the sounds changed. Not taps anymore. Scraping. Slow. Careful. Like something being dragged very lightly across concrete. It came from the far wall. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I told myself it was debris settling. A mouse. A rat. Anything small. But it kept going. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. Always the same distance. Always stopping in the same place. I turned my headlamp toward the sound. The beam revealed nothing new. Same wall. Same stains. Same pipes. The scraping stopped the moment the light touched it. Primera. Ha? Wa? I did. Seconds stretched. My jaw ached from clenching it. Then a whisper. Not a word. Just breath. Right behind me. I spun around so fast the light blurred. My heart slammed into my ribs. The camera on the tripod caught the movement. The sudden jerk of light. Nothing. The air behind me was colder. Noticeably colder. Like standing next to an open freezer. I stood up. Hello? Primera? Sa? It? My voice sounded wrong down there. Too thin. Like the room absorbed parts of it. No answer. I told myself I was done. Enough footage. Enough notes. I reached for the tripod, fingers numb, and that's when I noticed something on the floor. Footprints. Not mine. Bare. They were faint, like pressure marks and dust, rather than dirt. Small. Narrow, leading from the corner of the room to the base of the stairs. They stopped there. I stared at them for a long time. Then I slowly looked down at my own boots. No dust disturbed around them. The footprints hadn't been there before. I didn't run. Primera. Schuld. Ave. Instead, I packed up slowly. Deliberately. Like moving too fast would break some rule I didn't understand. As I lifted the tripod, the scraping started again. Louder this time. Closer. Scrape. Scrape. It was coming from beneath the desk. It didn't. Look. I backed toward the stairs, keeping the light forward. The air felt thick, heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. Halfway up the stairs, the whisper came again, clearer, closer. It sounded like my own breathing, played back to me half a second too late. I reached the hatch. It wouldn't open. I pushed harder. Metal groaned, but didn't lift. Panic flared hot and fast in my chest. Below me, something shifted. Not fast, not aggressive. Just present. I shoved the hatch again, muscles screaming. It lifted just enough to let cold night air rush down. The whisper stopped. I climbed out and slammed the hatch shut, locking it with shaking hands. I didn't go back into the house. I left. That night, I reviewed the footage. I shouldn't have. For the first 2 hours, nothing unusual appeared. Just me. The room. Dust drifting. Then, about 40 minutes before I left, the audio changed. A second breathing pattern appeared, out of sync with mine. Then, in the far corner of the frame, something darker than shadow shifted hoosed slightly toward the camera. It stopped whenever I looked directly at it. The final minutes of footage were worse. The camera captured whispers, not audible to me at the time. Repeating one phrase, over and over, "Stay." I sent the footage to the owner. He never replied. 2 weeks later, the house was sealed. Concrete poured into the basement, the shelter buried permanently. They said it was safer that way. Sometimes, late at night, when my apartment is quiet, I hear tapping soft, deliberate, between 3 and 4 seconds. And I swear, it sounds like it's coming from below the floor.